Hey there guys, it's Metro, and we are back doing another video in the series where we're looking to refresh ourselves and yourselves on all the interesting intricacies of the Legion Mythic Plus with Time Walking coming here in December. Today we're taking a look at Neltharion's Lair on 20. This is a very interesting dungeon because it was looked at as frankly, one of the easier dungeons of the time, but it had some very bizarre difficulty to it. And I think the layout of the dungeon was unique as well because of the way it was basically like this super linear dungeon, very long corridors. You couldn't really skip anything. Quite different than a lot of the other dungeons in Legion as well. And I'm not really sure how that might compare to the dungeons of today, but it's probably going to be a good thing for going back because there's really nothing you could do wrong in here. There's almost nothing optional in the dungeon. Very, very few things. So let's take a look. We're immediately going and getting a really big pull here. And these mobs, I don't really remember them doing much anyway. These crawlers, they explode and they put these puddles down on the ground. This was always a slam dunk pack, and it was always, historically, you always want to start a dungeon with as many mobs as possible pulled to get as many CDs as you can going. It's also necrotic in this footage. Now, necrotic was a lot easier to deal with in Legion because Death Knights had a legendary that allowed them to basically drop it. It was a magic debuff, as you see, it's plague damage instead of physical. But yeah, we'll see how that plays into it too. But yeah, these opening pulls are very strange. Can't jump over that mushroom. Don't even try. These opening pulls are very strange because it's just like a bunch of small mobs that I don't think they give count. Like I don't know what their function is here. They're just kind of annoying. So it's like really small mobs combined with a couple elites and these worms are really dumb because they keep jumping around. I think they try to go to one of your players. So kind of similar to maybe like the stuff in Plaguefall, probably maybe more like Theater, where those mobs just keep jumping to other players. Very annoying. I hate stuff like that. I always have, because especially in this case, if they do go to other players, a range could just completely mess everything up. I'm not sure that's how it works. It's probably not. They just go to random spots, but I'm pretty sure you can grip them. They're fully stunnable and all that stuff. So just a little bit. I mean, as you see here, I'm not even in range of them with necrotic up, but just kind of annoying. So we could skip this bit here. This is a very strange part of the dungeon. That rock that I just passed on the left used to actually not exist. It used to be that you could skip all of the stuff on the side that we just pulled, but yeah, that big guy is pretty dangerous. I would recommend skipping it. I don't think there's going to be any issues with count. The thing about the Legion dungeons is it's like, I don't really remember what was important count-wise, but I do remember a lot of them were just very straightforward. There was very little actual skipping that you would do. BFA was when you started to do all these like crazy death skips and stuff, but not really anything like that in this dungeon especially. And yeah, these mobs here, it doesn't seem like they actually do anything, but it's important that you fight them in a good spot, especially in this situation with necrotic, because I need to kite and I don't want to accidentally fight them too close to the pack that's there. All those crawlers, I do think they would social aggro the big guy. That big guy is like one of the hardest mobs in the dungeon, if I remember correctly. I don't remember what it did. I think it did like some kind of frontal. I think it's kind of just like the boss, which you're going to see is very similar in the model there. But you got to run over here and jump down. So this is very important what we're doing here. We're going to the left of this little bridge structure, failing to use Path of Frost for some reason. And then you're going to jump down by this waterfall or by this fallen bridge. Now this is another one of those situations just like in Mists. If you land on a rock, you die. And that's really bad this time, especially because if you notice the start of the dungeon, you actually like start above the dungeon and fall down, which does take a few seconds. So yeah, something to keep in mind. This fight is actually a very unique encounter. And we've talked about this a lot with these Legion refreshers, but a lot of these fights, they basically only have like 2 or 3 mechanics and they're all extremely deadly. So the main mechanic here is these ads. The ads, when they die, they leave the puddle. It's basically the same mob we were just fighting upstairs. But he's also going to do a mechanic that is going to deal damage based on the ads being alive. So I'm not sure. I mean, I guess there's a fight like that. It's like Hakar is kind of similar to that, a little different. But yeah, if those ads are alive when he does that shatter, it does a ton of damage. I'm pretty sure about that. That's how it works. So yeah, you just want to try to kill these and then deal with the puddles they're leaving. And there's some classes that are going to be way better at this. I remember, like, I think it was like Ellie Shaman would literally just like one shot them with an earthquake or something, or with a earth shock or whatever. So, but yeah, I think that's how it's working. The other thing he does is frontal. Okay, so I'm pretty. It looks like it's pretty much always at the tank. So just try to keep that facing away. It's a relatively decent fight for tanking, but there's a lot of mechanics that you need to be aware of, and it's a great fight for DK because if you can grip these mobs and keep these puddles, you see that puddle being gripped right there is really nice. And there's that shatter. You see that paladin take a lot of damage there. So I do think that means that there was just a lot of adds up. So you could fall apart. You could actually probably die if you don't kill the ads. But really, that's it. That's literally the only mechanics. There's actually no other mechanics. The frontal, which is completely dodgeable as long as the tank doesn't face him. The shatter, which is the only real danger on the fight, and then the ads, which are just either going to complicate the shatter or just going to die so fast that you won't even know they exist. That's kind of there's not a lot of middle ground on a fight like that. But it is the first fight in the raid, so obviously, or in the dungeon, so obviously you're always going to have lust for that. I can't imagine anybody will change that up. Now we're going down here, a little bit of RP. This fish thing, I don't know what this is, probably for an achievement. It doesn't seem relevant to the Mythic Plus version of this dungeon. And then we do have a small amount of, like, you can go a couple different ways here. I always thought this would have been a good place for skipping. Looking back at this dungeon, and it looks like we're going to do that. But I don't think you need to do this. But let's pay attention to count because I know I watched some footage of me do this before and we didn't do that. So that looks like a pretty standard, Demon Hunter or Rogue skip there. Just seeing that mob and just running to the left of it. Nothing special, but these mobs are special. This Breaker mob is very important. As you see, it's going to cast a spell called Avalanche. And the way that Avalanche spell works is you have to move, like it basically, he finishes the cast and then a rock falls on your head. And you'll see you actually have a few seconds to move away from it before it falls, okay? Not really a few seconds, but if you move the second the cast finishes, you won't get hit by it. That's how it worked in Legion. I don't think it would have changed. So something to keep in mind there because that does a lot of damage. It's physical damage. It's going to really hurt. I'd imagine even now it's still going to be a pain. So that's something to keep in mind. It's as at the time fully dodgeable. Now this guy is going to go try to bang that drum, and I can't remember why. I think he might summon some ads, but we're doing a lot of work to stop him from doing that. So another great time to be a DK. Gripping him. He's so mad. He's like whispering me after the key. That's how mad he is. But it's not really. I don't think it's a big deal. I think it summons some ads that probably don't contribute to count. Now this pack is interesting because I was recording this before, and I basically got flamed because I didn't do what I'm about to do right now. Okay, what I'm doing right now is kiting in a way that makes the mobs not do anything. Okay, now this is I'm almost certain that this won't still be in the game. Okay, but how it works is in Legion, if you were so far away from the mobs that they were just like completely out of your line of sight, they would not even do anything but run. So the reason we're kiting here, these mobs, so you see another avalanche mob, but they also do this jagged disc, and that just hits random players. Okay, so it's if you're in range, they don't do damage to you as the tank. Instead, they do damage to everyone else. Okay, so me kiting actually stops them from doing anything but running to try to catch me. That's all they'll do. Now again, I highly doubt that's gonna actually that's not gonna really exist. I don't think. Maybe, but are you gonna need to do it? I don't actually know. Either way, there's a lot of mobs like that in Legion, and it's a very notable part of Legion. Now, this big rock dude is probably the same mob that we were talking about earlier, and it's going to do this frontal, okay? This frontal is actually stoppable with a grip. It's another one of these casts that try to do an upcast, and then the ability happens. So piercing shards, that's a frontal, and you could stop it. You see I take a debuff there, but so you could stop these things with grips, okay? So these abilities that this mob casts, for some reason, doesn't look like this type of mob would be grippable, but it is fully grippable. So every time that piercing shards happen, I can grip it and I'll stop it. I could stun it and I'll stop it. Blind, disorient, knockback, any of those things will stop the cast. So this is kind of like, this is the exercise of this dungeon, is finding ways to make the mechanics not happen. And that's basically it. And this is the same type of pack here. Okay, we have the breaker again. This whole area is very easy, but you know, you see everybody get hit by that. It's like, wow, that's really bad. So if you're not gonna stop that, and I did this on the PTR, and it was pretty rough. People constantly getting smacked by these things. These mobs, these breaker mobs, are gonna do a lot of damage, and the other mobs do stuff too. You know, we didn't even talk about it, but it's just so inconsequential compared to the breaker because that avalanche is monstrous, pure physical damage. And again, I don't know if it's avoidable still to this day, but the way you used to deal with it. And you could also just stun the mob or do other things. But yeah, you see that guy actually says it in chat. Got to move from where you were standing from Avalanche. So yeah, as soon as Avalanche gets cast, rock falls, you could actually move away from it. And it's the same, there's a couple things like that. So we just want to stop these frontals on this guy. Otherwise, interrupt the Shaper. Stone Bolt, again, is casting on not me. So these mobs are going to hit pretty hard. And I don't know, how reality is going to look for that on the time walking version, but in Tyrannical, probably not a big deal. But this is actually a fortified week. In Legion, Tyrannical was like looked at as like insanely difficult. Everything's scaled really, really hard. But this is a fortified week. It's a probably pretty bad fortified week. I remember Sanguine used to be looked at as like a very easy to fix set because of how open the dungeons were kiting wise. But yeah, regardless, probably a pretty tough week. So you got to clear this whole trash out. I think you might be able to avoid. I don't think it aggroes with the boss, but this boss has a very weird mechanic that if you're thinking about trying to skip these mobs here, it's probably not going to end up working out. These pelters also do this disengage, and this is another reason why these mobs suck. So you see, this is probably like, again, this is basically the same pack we were talking about before. 2 mobs doing jagged discs, 1 mob doing avalanche. This is going to be a lot of damage taken here, regardless of affixes or whatever. And that sucks. When they jump away like that, oh my god, I can't stand that. Always been one of my least favorite things, and there's a lot of it in this dungeon. So again, good time to be a Blood DK. Having grips, super useful, especially when the mobs are separating themselves like that. Keeps them in DPS range. Everything dies faster. So I think we're going to pull that pack, and I think we're actually going to skip the pack on the far right. So it's basically 4 packs stationary and then 1 pack padding. If I remember correctly, we're going to pull only 4, the patrol, and then 3 of the stationary packs. And then that pack in the back corner, we're going to skip. So again, keep in mind for count, but I think really if you just go in a straight line in this dungeon, count is no factor. Just the thing is, like, I just don't ever remember count being a factor in Legion. I just can't remember a time when we're like, oh, we don't have count. The only one was always Eye of Ajara, and that we already did that video, but that's it. So this dungeon this boss is very interesting. Oh yeah, we even CC'd that mob just in case. Interesting. So anyway, this is a very interesting boss. He basically again only has 1 mechanic, and it's like a cups game type mechanic. So you'll see it here shortly. He also does a little interesting. So that's like a tank breaker, typical, like first boss in Necrotic Wake. Nothing special. This is an interesting mechanic right here. You see what I just did? So what he's gonna do, he's gonna summon these totems. Okay, let's talk about that real quick. He's gonna summon these totems, and he's gonna put one down on his right hand, and he's gonna put one down on his left hand. Okay, so I don't know if that's the right way to look at it, but he's going to put them down in like this order here. Like there's going to be one on this side and one on this side. So what I do is I actually turn him to stack them up. You see, he put the one on this hand over here first, and then I turn him so this hand is facing the same area that previous totem went down, and then they go down right on top of each other. Otherwise, they're separated, and you can't AoE them down with the boss. So a little tip there. Again, I don't know how important that will be, but those are the things that I recognize myself doing. Now here's the cups game. So here's how it works. The middle one is the one you need to follow. So what I always used to do was I would just keep my mouse on it. So I would go over here, and I would just keep my mouse on it the whole time. And that's what I'm going to do in this footage. So here, we got mouse here, over here, and moved a little bit to the right. I'm following it again, over here, down here, over to the left, and that's it. And this is the one you have to kill. Now, if you kill the wrong one, it's just like Mistcaller and Mrs. Turn of Scythe. Very bad. I think you take damage, but the longer this phase goes, the worse it gets. So as you see, accurately pick that up, and that's it. We got it out. And if we did that wrong, it would be a calamity. Now, there used to be a WeakCore for this, and I don't think it works anymore. But a very famous person, you might know him, Nagi or Naga or whatever his name is, he made some crazy-ass WeakCores in Legion. WeakCores that were, like, frankly, revolutionary. And one of them was for this fight. He found a way to figure out which one was the correct target without you having to do it yourself. And I don't remember whatever happened to that WeakCore, but the fact that I'm not using it in this footage probably means it doesn't work anymore. But I do remember that being the case. He also does this other mechanic, Strike of the Mountain. Just move out of the hands. He's going to bring hands from 4 orientational directions, and you just kind of move through. You know what I mean? It's very nothing special there. You just move away from them, and if you get hit, I think you get like rooted or stunned or something. So you're gonna do this. I think it was like usually 3 times on this difficulty. You know, on 20 fortified, you'd usually have about 3 or probably 2 or 3 phases. Kind of similar again to first boss and Mist, where I don't think it has anything to do with percentage, but maybe. I'm pretty sure it has something to do with his energy. I was just thinking like, oh, maybe it's more like Mistcaller. But yeah, I think you could see if the quality is high enough, you could actually see his energy or mana or something going up. I think that's how it works. I think when he gets to 100, the fight ends or the fight phases. So, and that's it. That's again 3 mechanics. That's basically it. Nothing you can do about that avalanche looking mechanic this time around, I don't think. But he's dead, so that's it. I also want to say that you can actually skip this boss. I've done it a lot when I was soloing this dungeon. I don't think there's any benefit to it. It's very hard to pull off, and I don't think anyone's going to do it in an actual group, but it is possible. Now here we are again doing a skip. This is another really bad pack. Again, all the problem mobs that we saw thus far. So another great time to have a Demon Hunter or a Rogue. And instead we're going to go down here and get some of this count. But, you know, like I said, it's really, I'm sure in the time walking version, I mean, especially if you're not doing anything super crazy, I don't really know how it's going to work still, but I don't know if that matters. But it's the same mobs you've been fighting, so if you fought them and you didn't have any issues, maybe you don't need to skip that pack. But otherwise, grab these 3 mobs, basically replacing the mobs you skipped, and it looks like we're going to be at about 60% count, leaving this going towards the 3rd boss. And let's see how much count. Yeah, they're actually giving about 1.5% each. So yeah, that's a lot of count. So we're going to be about 62%. Yep, 62.5. Okay, good. So now we're going down here. More of these worms. This is a new mob type coming up though. This is another this grub smasher. Pretty important mechanic. I don't really, that's stone shatter. I don't remember, but I think what he's going to do is he's going to try to spawn. I think that's I believe that's him, right? He's going to spawn an ad. Okay, so yeah, see there's a worm thing behind me? Metamorphosis, tar spitter, whatever, grub, okay? If you let that cast finish, it turns into another tar spitter lurker. Like another full mob. That's going to be a full 100% health. And I was looking at footage, and we had that happen a lot. And there's no reason for that, because it can be stunned. Obviously, you got to kill it. Like, it's just not, just kill it. I mean, it's not a problem. I'm 90% sure if you stun it, it just stops the cast anyway. So that's really lazy. Don't let that happen. But that's going to be present on these mobs here. I'm 90% sure that's the Grub Master's doing. But that's pretty much it. Looks like fire in the ground. Dodge that from the Shaper. Stone Bolt. Maybe that was from the worm or something. But Petrifying Totem. Stunning that. Looks like a good choice. Don't know what that does. It doesn't sound like something you really want to do. But I think he's going to spawn another. This was back when we used to use Blood Drinker, and Blood Drinker would have been great for this. Just turn and kill that grub. I think that's it's coming up here, but looks like the Stone Shatter maybe is just like an AoE around the mob. Doesn't look like it's hitting the hunter. He's pretty far away. Yeah, it's definitely only hitting the melee, so Paladin, Ivanka, Trump, and the Demon Hunter are getting hit, but the Hunter is not, so that's like a melee. Could probably stop that as well. It looks like maybe it's not the Grub Master that made those. Here's a great pack to combine. It's basically begging for it. Relatively hard mobs, though. Those small guys hit pretty hard. As you see, I almost die there. Considering it's tyrannical. Oh, wait, is it? No, it's fortified. Okay, well, relatively hard. And there's another Metamorphosis mob, so we just, we're kiting a bit now. And yeah, okay, so these mobs again. This one's actually a little different. Root Drool Grabber. I think that dude is, yeah, Barbed Tongue. Okay, so that's actually a mechanic that's on the boss. And as you can see up there in the corner, it's going to pick a person and try to like suck them in. So this pack's not going well at all for us. Something to keep in mind though. Yeah, that's interesting. Really sloppy kill of this pack. I expected it to go well, but I mean, I guess Necrotic doesn't help. I'm running all around. And there's the Metamorphosis, and we're going to stop it. Okay, so Grip doesn't stop it, it looks like. But we stop it in some other way. So that Grub does not go dormant with just a Grip. You have to stun it probably. Vicious Bile, that's a frontal. Could move out of that. But yeah, you see people constantly get pulled to that mob, so yeah, it's really not a very optimal pull there, it feels like, looking back at that. But I remember doing this constantly. Like, I don't think I ever didn't do that. I think the issue is you kind of have to do that. Like, they're right next to each other. So kind of a pain. But yeah, you see it does look like it goes to that hunter, right? Like, it rolls up right on top of where he is. So not great. Okay, another very interesting boss. Really, all four of these bosses are very unique. This boss is going to do pretty much exactly what we just saw in the trash. And this time it's always going to be on the tank. And if you get picked up, you are dead. It does a lot of damage. This was a hard one. When I used to do the soloing, this was a very hard one to solo because alone. So the way it works is he's going to spit these puddles out. I think it's this one here, Toxic Wretch. Now this is just dodge this. You're just meant to dodge this. Yeah, or stand in it like I am, I guess. Probably doing it for some reason. But anyway, yeah. Oh, actually, no, I remember why I was standing in it, because it's actually hard to dodge it as a tank. This boss's melee hitbox is very small. And if you move even a yard or two away from the boss, it can easily kill a DPS. So I'm actually just saying, forget about it. I'm going to stand in this and just make sure that we don't have this issue. Not the smartest play on my part looking back, but that's probably why I was doing it. So definitely something to keep in mind. As DPS, obviously you're free roam to just do whatever you got to do, because it doesn't really matter if you're not in range. You'll just lose some damage. But if I run out of melee range, those mobs are dead, or those people are dead. So anyway, you see these green puddles. I guess one of the mechanics, probably the mechanic I was talking about, puts this puddle down, and it slows you when you run through it. Now you have Death's Advance as a Blood DK, so it's not really a big deal. But everybody else is going to have to actually do it right. So yeah, just make sure if you aren't able to do something. I mean, I guess we're going to be able to use like Soul Shape and stuff. So that's, I'll have no issues with this fight whatsoever as a DK now. But yeah, just keep in mind, it does look like these guys are taking a lot of damage. And I don't know if it's just from this Wretch. I mean, it looks like it's also doing damage. Oh, wait, there's a whole nother mechanic that I don't even see because of the point of view I have. There's these ads that spawn. And if they get to them, he eats them. And they get he gets a huge buff. That's why this fight was so hard to solo. Because these ads come down, and it's like insanely difficult to get them killed alone. But as two people, you're just going to kill them. I think they jump down from the two corners, and I'm pretty sure you could slow them. I remember like just spam gripping them over and over again, and they would just never get to the boss. But you as the tank, again, you're not going to be able to do that. If you run out of melee range, people are going to die. So that's funny. I forgot all about that, because you literally can't even see that happening as a tank. So not a very well designed boss in terms of like how close you have to be to it and how difficult it is to interact with the mechanics. But that's clearly what they were designing it around. They wanted it to be, you have to be very aware of where you are with position to the boss. Okay, so now we have somewhat similar mechanics down here. Same mobs. This is all relatively skippable. These mobs are actually like, you don't even need like an invis pot or anything. You kind of just run by a lot of them. But the breakers, again, that was just the straight up same mechanic, avalanche. So, just move out of that. I don't know. It's probably not going to be moved out of realistically. I don't think anybody knows that. And maybe it doesn't even work anymore. So just keep that in mind. Now here we have these scorpions. These are very unique mobs. And I guess I'm not really sure of what mobs would be similar to this, honestly. But from what I can tell, the mob on the back of the scorpion is doing insane damage to people. And I think I still can't figure this out, to be honest. But I think it's just throwing stuff at people. And then the scorpion itself also does that frontal. And then it did that frenzy cast too. So I mean, I don't know. Can you remove that frenzy nowadays? Back in Legion, there was no D in rage. That didn't exist as Hunter and Druid. That was maybe it did. I don't remember. It was just not on raging. I know that much. But yeah, that frontal, as you see, hits the Demon Hunter there, not good. But these mobs are brutal. And like I said, when I did this on the PTR, it like slaughtered us. This mob just absolutely slaughtered us. And again, another trapper, so more jagged discs. Frankly, I just couldn't figure out what was killing us on the pack, to be honest. But all I know is that Scorpion, you can see it's kind of just constantly doing AoE. It's like throwing spikes out. And then that frontal is particularly brutal. So frenzy there, and let's see if it gets removed. Well, the hunter's dead. I know that Rogue doesn't have it in this expansion, so it doesn't last very long. You can see it's about to expire. It doesn't last very long, so I don't really know how important that is, but clearly, if you can stop that or stun it during the frenzy, probably be a good idea, considering how much damage we're taking. I could actually grip it as I do, and then the Demon Hunter also stuns it, so good little play, I guess. But yeah, surprisingly difficult mobs here. We have 92%, so I bet we don't have count here. I think if I remember correctly, we do the boss and then go back and get count. That was always like, because there's a bunch of count just standing up there. But there is a little bit of an issue here. I'm going to let you know right now. It's quite odd to get out of this area. There is a portal right across from us, like right on the other side of this mob. And it takes you out of the dungeon. So when I did this on the PTR, people's gear was broken, and they were like, well, I guess we're done then, because they didn't know you can get out. They thought they had a hearth, but no, you can actually just walk right out. The weird thing about that, though, it takes you nowhere near the entrance to the dungeon. It's like a little RP, I guess, meant to be like you're walking out with respect to where you would be in the dungeon. So you're actually on the opposite side of the zone because of how big this dungeon is. So very, yeah, I don't think you're going to want to do that regardless. But my point is that if for some reason you have no count, I don't actually know if there's a way to get back up. I remember that being an issue. And yeah, as you see, we don't actually have count. That's funny. So I'm not sure why that would be. I think it's just because we skipped like 3 different things when we should have only skipped maybe 2. So counts a part of this fight, part of this dungeon. 6 minutes left though. Now here's a little tip here. This guy, and I think they changed this, but at this point in the expansion of Legion, this guy's main mechanic was an active mitigation check. And if you didn't use your active mitigation, you'd get knocked back like crazy, okay? But here's the main mechanic, this Molten Char Skin. This mob is going to, and you see that knockback there. That's why I'm tanking him where I am. And then the Molten Crash actually would be the active mitigation check, I believe. But anyway, that Molten Char Skin has a ton of health. And whenever he runs into one of those walls that the boss creates for you, he takes a ton more damage. So another great fight to be a Blood DK. So we're going to let him run into the wall, and then I'm going to grip him on top of the boss, and then we're going to continue to cleave down the boss in the ad. But he's going to follow a player. That ad is going to follow a player. It's fixate on a player, and if it reaches that player, he's going to hit very hard. So constantly landslide, and then active mitigation check. That Molten Crash. If you get hit by that Molten Crash without the active mitigation check, you go flying and you die. I don't think that's in the game anymore, though. I think they actually removed that with 9.15 there. Like, those are gone. So Magma Wave is the next mechanic. It's going to be a bunch of AoE damage. It's going to hit the ground a bunch, and you need to hide behind the rocks, okay? So those rocks just come up by players, I believe. But if he hits them with one of the mechanics, he'll break them. So you really want to be careful about that. And then obviously if the rock guy breaks them, which is supposed to happen, and you don't have any left, it's that crystal spikes, it looks like. He just puts those out at players. And yeah, obviously, if you don't have any up for some reason, when he does the AoE, like the hide mechanic, you die. So it's very important that you get that ad to hit 1. And I think I remember doing this. I would run out there and grip the mob on top of the spikes, like as fast as possible. And it's like, let's get this done as fast as humanly possible. Because the longer that ad's alive, the more potential it could be that something goes wrong. And then here's the Magma Wave. So you see everybody's hiding behind the thing. I'm not doing it because Blood DK, but I don't know. Maybe I will. I doubt it. But realistically, That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to dodge. And yeah, that landslide's a frontal. So that's what. So if I aim that at one of those rock walls, it's going to break it. So this fight actually has a lot more than 3 mechanics. But I think one of the big ones, I don't think that giant knockback, I don't think it matters. I don't think that works anymore. But you see we have 2 ads, so we then just need 1 mob. So we're just going to go out here and get 1 mob. So as long as you have like 60 some percent before you head to the 3rd boss, you're going to be fine. But do be aware that this is it. This is the only other countdown here. There's this and one other, I think there's like 3 mobs here total. And if you don't have count here, then yeah, you're in trouble. But that's probably like 4 or 5% count in those two or 3 mobs there. So that's it. That was, I mean, I always looked at it as a very easy dungeon. And I'm not really sure what would be difficult today. But I will say the avalanche and those the trash mobs, very difficult. And it's a really, I did it like I said on the PTR, and it was high damage. Like people took a ton of damage from that mechanic. So you could stop it with like stuns and grips and stuff too, but again, unless they change it, you should be able to dodge this mechanic, and you should be telling people to do it, and maybe try to get them a good example of how to do it. But it's like very easy. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or if you know anything that I don't know, I would really appreciate that, because I do feel like this is a great place for people to come and learn. And I don't remember a lot of this stuff myself. So thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.